What is up, fam? If you are over 40, you're premenopausal, going through menopause, and you have that muffin top, that spare tire, that weight that you never had before that you just can't seem to get rid of, this video is for you. So let's go ahead and let's get into it, because the reality is no, you're not crazy, and what used to work no longer works for you. So let's talk about what's actually happening from a biological perspective inside of your body so that you can actually understand it. And then we'll talk about strategies that you can actually use to overcome this. So when you start to become essentially premenopausal, so for a lot of us that happens, late 30s, early 40s. So what will start to happen is our progesterone will start to decline. So this is going to affect things like your mood, your sleep, anxiety, things like that. So you'll have that progesterone that will start to decline. This also happens when you are overstressed. And then the other thing, your estrogen will start to go all over the place. So it's up, down, up, down, up, down. That's during premenopause. And then when you get into menopause, those levels actually drop. So here's the thing. Here's the reason why you're storing belly fat. So the good news is that you're actually not stuck with this belly fat. But again, what used to work no longer works. So there's a whole cascade of things that are going on inside of your body. So if this is you, go ahead, and I know that you're still watching, say hi to me in the comments below so that I know that you're here, you're buckled up, you are ready to go on this journey with me and learn about what's going on with your body. Just say, hey, Jess, in the comments below. All right, so your estrogen drops, your progesterone drops, okay? So what happens? Why do we actually store more belly fat? Well, we have estrogen receptors in our body, and a lot of them are primarily in our hips, our thighs, our booty. And so a lot of times for a lot of us, we have that that pear shape when we are younger, right? Where you gain weight more in your booty, your hips, and your thighs. And oftentimes when we see women that are estrogen dominant, this is where they're not able to lose weight because estrogen receptors are down there. And so those estrogen receptors are being filled up and they're pulling fat in with them. In addition, it can be that fat is inflammatory, so it's going to pull water in and things like that as well. Well, with a drop in estrogen, there's no more estrogen binding to those estrogen receptors. So what happens? Well, we get a relative dominance of our androgens. So even if you don't have high testosterone, in relation to your other hormones, you have a relative increase. Well, those receptors tend to be around our midsection. And this isn't that subcutaneous fat that's inside, this is visceral fat. And so all that visceral fat, right, you call it your muffin top, you call it your spare tire, we have all these different words for it. So all those receptors are now being more activated because there's no estrogen binding to our estrogen receptors. And so it's binding up here, and it's actually going to, again, pull in water with it. It's going to pull in and make us store fat differently around here, right? Because it's like pulling, all these receptors are being activated. The problem is that when these receptors are activated and we start to store more fat up here, it starts to exponentially increase. So it's not just hey, I got a little bit of fat from here to up here. The problem is that it's also very inflammatory. So it's sending out a lot of inflammation. That inflammation is going to make us accumulate a lot of water there as well. And it's also going to change the way our fat cells actually look. That's right. It actually changes the way your fat cells look. And so instead of it being bound down here, it's now bound up here. Well, the problem is that that's actually sending out inflammation. In addition, it is interfering with the way that we actually burn fat. And so now you've got a double whammy. Not only are you storing more fat, but that fat is causing inflammation, which is interfering with your ability to then burn more fat. Right? Are you with me still? Are you guys with me? This is totally not fair. And I feel like we as women totally got the short end of the stick here, right? But hold on, because it actually gets more. Okay. So now not only are we storing more fat up here, we're creating more inflammation, we're storing more water, we're also now unable to burn fat as effectively. Well, because of that, we also become more insulin resistant. Insulin, we're pumping out more insulin. More insulin means we are storing more fat and we are less efficient at using the energy. And so you've got this whole cascade of things that are going on with that drop in estrogen. Additionally, you are less resilient to stress. Stress is going to cause an increase in cortisol, which is also going to cause you to store more belly fat. we also, because of that drop in estrogen, you're at an increased risk of a number of different things, such as leaky gut, such as SIBO, issues with your liver, cardiovascular disease. Heart disease is the number one killer of women. And what else? Also, I think there's 1 in 4 adults has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease as well. So your liver is anywhere between 10 and 15% of your metabolism. And so you have this whole cascade of things that are essentially going on inside of your body. It's like this whole cascade. And so by just going on hormones or just replacing those, you're actually not going to be able to undo or negate those effects, because you've also got to work on the liver. You've got to work on the insulin and the blood sugar, right? You've got to work on the gut. You've got to work on all of these things together. You've got to work on your stress response and your resilience. And so you've got to really tackle all of these things in order to get rid of that spare tire or muffin top or whatever you call it in menopause. And so the reality is you're not crazy, and what used to work is not going to work. In fact, it's actually going to make the problem worse, because it's going to accelerate these issues and accelerate this resistance that your body is having, because it's more inflammatory, right? Because you're less efficient at burning fat, you're more efficient at storing fat, right? And you've got all these things going on. So what can you do, right? What the heck can you do? Number one is you've got to decrease your stress response, whether this be mental or physical stresses, right? You've got to work on those. You've got to support your liver. You've got to support your gut health, right? You've got to be working on your mindset, right? And you've got to make sure that your hormones are in the right ratios, okay? And that's why, like I said, just going on hormone replacement is oftentimes not the answer. You've got to actually have your hormones in the right ratios and be supporting your body with the right lifestyle factors as well. It's not just as simple as just adding in some hormones and poof, this is fixed, because there's a whole cascade of other things that are still happening with your liver, with your insulin, with your blood sugar, with your adrenals. There's all these other things that are still happening as well. And so you've got to really support all of these systems in order to actually tackle this issue, but it can be done. So I wanted to share that with you guys. I know this is a lot of like sciencey type of stuff, but so many women ask me about this. And so it is a real thing. There is actual biology behind it. That's why it's happening. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments below or send me a DM. Otherwise, I'll see you guys back with more info about this later this week.